Hey, kids, welcome to another exciting edition of the Dudes in Hyperspace podcast. I am your host, Ian J. Malone, joined as always momentarily by my good friends Rob Howell, Kevin Steverson. Before we get to them, though, you know what we do at this time of the show, babe. It's time to pay some bills, and that is to give a big fat shout out to our presenting sponsor, of course, Chris Kennedy Publishing. Doesn't matter what you're into, folks. If it's military sci-fi, been a lot of that lately. High fantasy, been a lot of that too. Space opera, come to think of it, a lot of that too. Urban fantasy, yep, got it. Holy crap, it's like they have everything or something at Chris Kennedy Publishing. Don't believe me? Go to chriskennedypublishing.com. Read all about their books, their artists, their series. Sign up for their newsletter if you have not already. Get yourself a free ebook in the process. They are Chris Kennedy Publishing, and they are message-free sci-fi with a slice of fantasy. So bringing in the fellas now. Rob, Kevin, how are we doing? Kevin, I'll start with you since you're wearing your Georgia hat. What's up?
Of course I'm wearing Georgia. I mean, listen, we did our third string did allow a touchdown last week. I will say that.
I saw that. Your squad is very, very good. And for the record, in this being our first ever mailbag segment, you'll be happy to know that we did get a question about college football. So you will get to opine quite a bit on your beloved dogs.
Nice.
Rob, what's going on? Good. Rob, what's up with you, man?
Man, the last 16 days have been something. I mean, I've had 4 books that I've contributed to released.
Yeah.
No Game for Knights, The Pain Bearer, the Valkyries Initiative, and Chimera Coop, which we're going to talk about those later, those last 2 later. I've been on, this is the 4th podcast in that time, twice here. We recorded for Dudes and 2 others. And then I went to FenCon, which was absolutely fantastic. Had a great
FenCon
time.
Looked like it was a great time, man. There was a great lineup there.
It was almost like LibertyCon Light. And since I chose to go to my own wedding instead of LibertyCon, what kind of fool am I? I really needed to hang out with a lot of those people that I didn't get to see back in June. And man, it was one of those healing for the soul conventions. It was great.
Sure. Well, we are rolling along in the Malone house. We actually had a bit of news today, as a matter of fact. Our family got a new addition in the form of a 6-month-old puppy that we adopted.
Aww.
So she's a sweetie. I'll throw up pictures on social media later on. She is, we think, some sort of a lab bulldog mix. We found her at an adoption day this past weekend. So History Class Brewing Company, who you guys know if you listen to this show, we had their head brewmaster on a while back talking about beer, Tim Whaler. They have lots of community events. As we talked about in that show, they are, it's the reason why they're one of my favorite places to go hang out in Panama City, because not only do they have great food and great beer, but they're also very big into the community. And this past weekend, they had a local adoption group down to have a doggy day, puppy day there at the bar. And they brought in a bunch of dogs and had all their people set up to man adoptions and all that. And this one was in the crowd, and she was an absolute sweetie who stole my freaking heart right out of the gate. I was, you can ask Natalie, I was pretty well smitten from the start. And so we filled out the paperwork, and they sent the person by the house to do the house check and backyard and make sure you got a fence and all that. And she came today. So big times in the Malone house.
Would that be a Bulbrador or a Labradog?
That's actually an excellent question. I will put that to my all-world vet whenever I take her to meet in here in about 2 weeks. Like, so give me the rundown. We got, is there milkman blood here, or what are we dealing with? So, but she's sweet. She's radically more low key than any puppy I've ever met for a dog of her age. Like and maybe she'll liven up a little bit more whenever she's a little bit more comfortable in the house. But today, she just cruises, man. She just wobbles through the house. She has figured out where the kitchen is. That took all of 30 seconds. But she just cruises, just checks it out. She's like, all right, check it. There's a bed in this room too. Let me go check that bed. I need to inspect that. She'll lay down for a while, gnaw on a toy. All right, moving on. And she wobbles on down the hall a little bit more and checks it out. If somebody there, yep, check. That's been the day. So she's
awesome.
Cool. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, we definitely need to see pictures.
Yep. I'll get that up ASAP. All right. As kind of teased here at the top, and as you undoubtedly guessed from the title of this show, This is an episode of the Dudes in Hyperspace podcast that is dedicated solely to you, the listeners. A while back, we kind of streamed out the format of this show when we went to video to kind of create just a little bit more of a simpler format. And we did away with our pod mail segment in favor of just a general aired out segment where we talk about kind of whatever we want. But we made you guys the promise that from time to time we would do one of these mailbag episodes where it's nothing but you, the listener, and your questions. So that is tonight. Before we get started with our first question, though, I do want to give a shout out to the folks who sponsor all of our pod mail stuff. And that would, of course, be the International Association of Science Fiction and Fantasy Authors. We all love free books, right? Well, they got them every single month. Go to iasfa.org. Make sure you sign up for their newsletter. You hear me stress newsletter a lot on this show, guys, and there's a reason for that. It's because the Facebook algorithm or the Instagram algorithm, whatever you follow, it doesn't always want you to see stuff. Like it wants to choose what you see and what you don't. So when you go sign up for a newsletter, hint, hint, Ian J. Malone newsletter, Rob Howell newsletter, Kevin Stevenson newsletter, Chris Kennedy Publishing newsletter, that means you always get the information whenever you want it. We send it straight to your box and it's always there. So in any event, the IASFA folks, go there, sign up for their newsletter because they're doing stuff every month, whether it's promotional giveaways for full novels, anthology shorts and bundles. They're constantly doing stuff over there because they are all about connecting quality stories with readers. That's all they're there to do. That and build community for writers. So if you're an author looking to plug in with other writers, IASFA has you covered. Go sign up for a free account, join the association. Again, it doesn't cost you anything, and start plugging in with some circles. Learn more about your craft, learn more about book marketing. It's all right there. So again, whether you're a reader or whether you're a writer, International Association for Science Fiction and Fantasy Authors, man, they have got you covered in spades. They're a world-class group. Can't recommend them enough. That website, again, is iasfa.org. That's iasfa.org. So, all right, let's get to our first question, which comes to us from Matt. Hey, guys, how do you choose the names for your characters? Is that just like random? Or is there some sort of a method to the madness? Also, how does this apply specifically for alien names? And do you have a favorite among the characters that you've created? Kevin, I'll start with you, man. I've had Salvage on the brain lately for obvious reasons, and you got lots of aliens in that world. So let's start with you, bud. Alien character names in general, but also specifically alien names. How do you get there?
Well, when I first started writing Salvage, I wanted a memorable name.
Yeah.
And there's a couple ways you can do that. You can have some crazy spelling with hyphens everywhere that nobody can pronounce and everybody thinks it different in their mind when they read.
Yep.
Or I thought you can go old school. And so I named him Harmon.
Yeah.
You're not going to forget that name. Is that name popular now? No, it's not. There's a newer character I brought on in like the 5th or 6th book named Uriah. Same thing. It's an old school name. And it's going to be memorable and people are going to remember those names. And that's why I did that. With the aliens, it depends on the race. Yeah. I've got one race that every name they have has the an LE in there. The guy's name is Lonkel, or you know what I mean. It's always sounding that way. All the Piketh have one name. They don't have for the last name. They don't have a middle name. They have one name. Every one of them has just one name, and that's deliberate. One of the alien races in the first book, there's a first letter, then an apostrophe, and then there's the rest of the name. Every single alien of that race has that.
Right.
Tekereth, and it starts with that. And it's just the way I did that. In another series, it's in the Four Horsemen, but there's Gyro and Larth, and they are two peacemakers, which are buddy cops, right? That was deliberate when I named them, because I can go on and on, because we're talking Crockett and Tubbs, right? We're talking Starsky and Hutch, Paunch and Baker, and I can just go on and on. Tango and Cash, right. Riggs and Murdoch. That's why they're Gyro and Larth.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where that came from.
So now, do you keep a running Bible, so to speak, of, okay, this species has first letter apostrophe. This species has one name only. This species has human names, and they are typically derived from maybe a Slavic background or a Latin background. Like, do you keep a running tally of that stuff for world building purposes?
I do. All the Yalteens, the big Yalteens that are in my book, if you'll notice, all of them have 2 O's in their name.
Okay.
Whether it's Barut, whether it's Galuth, whether it's just one of those things. Now, if they're raised on a different planet or get away from their home planet, there's going to be some differences. Yeah. But for the most part, they have that, Okay. And it's just there.
Cool. Rob, how about you, man? How do you come up with character names?
Well, one of the things I think Kevin talked about there that I absolutely dearly love is some sort of cultural tendency or naming pattern within an alien race or something like that. For example, Rahan Kial-Tala of my Forester story, the Kashkala who is now a sergeant in the Foresters, the Rahan is the clan name. The Kial is the personal name, and then Tla is the kinship within the clan's name. And some of that's taken from sort of the idea of the Roman structure of names. But I wanted to do that so that there was some sort of connection to each one of them. Like, so Rahan Tranit Tala, who is the peacemaker he deals with, hits his uncle. You can see that there's some familiar connection there.
Yeah.
In the case of in case of human names, oftentimes I'll use beyondthenames.com. This is an incredibly useful site. You can first of all, it has a random name generator. Second of all, you can look up any name. You can look up any sort of ethnicity you want. If I want, say, for example, a German name or a Russian name or something like that. Also, like I say, it has a random name, and the randomizer lets you pick whatever culture you want. Furthermore, the randomizer lets you click masculine or feminine or either. Do you want a last name? Then it also has the wonderful let's pick a life story. So occasionally I've got a brand new character and I need, say, a birth date or something like that, or something approximating one. Or I want to know if they're left-handed or right-handed. It talks about all that. Maybe I don't really have a particular size in mind for the character and just want to kind of go with something random. It gives you a size, height, and a weight. So from my perspective, I may use nothing on a page. I may just hit regenerate because I didn't like what's there. But from my perspective, it's a way I can jumpstart sort of a basis for each one of my characters. But I think the key thing is that you do want to have your characters fit the society they're in. And if it's in brand new society, create your own naming conventions and stick to them. And that way you can look at the Kashkalas that I've created and go, oh, that's a Kashkala, and I know why, because this is from that planet, because this is that structure, and so on down the line.
Yeah, I do think uniformity is definitely a way to go. That's a great resource, by the way, beyondthenames.com. Like, I totally made a note about that. I will keep that on file. That is super handy. I'm as you guys know, being sight impaired, like my whole world is built around sound, like how things sound. If it doesn't sound right, I mean, what it looks like on the page doesn't mean anything to me because I rarely ever see it unless I'm writing it on my 32-inch monitor with Windows Magnify jacked up to 900x. All right. That's what I'm working with. So when I think about names for characters, it's all about how does it sound? Typically I'll play with phonetic things. If I need a jumping off point, I will think of a trait of a character that, that this really kind of is a strong character, bold or quiet or whatever. I'll go run, language searches for those adjectives and look up how, different languages translate that word until I find something that phonetically sounds cool to me. And then I'll play with the spelling, and that's my name of my character. I also try and keep things fairly uniform, like they're talking about. If I have one race and I kind of established it culturally, this is how these guys, name their people. I keep a running tally of that, and I try and make sure that that I keep that uniform. Because again, you don't do that stuff too long, man. Readers will freaking call you out for that real quick in a hurry. Be like, hey, this guy's name is, Caltech or whatever. His name can't be Bob. Like, we can't have a guy in this species. His name's Bob. That's not cool. That doesn't fly. Like, they'll let you know. So anyway, good stuff. All right. Next question comes to us from Reggie. So much from Matt Ryan and the Colts being contenders. Snicker, snicker, snicker. I know the NFL season is still young as of yet, but thus far, what have been your biggest surprises and stories to watch? Professor Howell, I will give you lead on this. The NFL is definitely your domain, man. So hit it. What have you seen so far in 2022?
Well, I think you have to look first at the Bills being above and beyond the pack right now.
Yeah.
I mean, we're going to talk about Georgia later on being above and beyond the pack in NCAA football this year. And I think the Bills are sort of in that position. The Chiefs are close. They're in that range as well, and certainly it's a long season, and who knows what injuries are going to happen. But man, I've watched both Bills games, and I've just been like,
Yep.
where's the weakness there?
Yep.
And I haven't found it. They've got playmakers on offense. Allen is playing great. Their pass rush has been ferocious. Their defense overall has done really well. I've been surprisingly impressed with the Eagles. I hate to say it. I have not been a Jalen Hurts fan. Jerry Jones actually said something on an interview recently that he watched the game on Monday and was really impressed with Hurts, and that he's taken his game up a level. And I have to agree. I haven't seen him do this level of passing in the past. His running, his capability,
Right.
but his decision making was much better, and his accuracy in terms of leading them. They're one of 3 2-0 teams in the NFC, and frankly, I look at the Giants and I don't see it. I mean, they've not
Sure.
necessarily played the best teams, but the win against Minnesota was a strong win, and I thought Minnesota was going to be a good team.
Yep.
Tampa, Tampa's looked good too. Now we're again 2 weeks in the season. Any team can be in it. So on the other side, I would look at some of the 0-2 teams, and what am I surprised at? I'm actually not terribly surprised about the 0-2 teams. I mean, I suppose I'm a little surprised at Cincinnati, but Cincinnati started off with a couple of hard games.
Yep.
I've had my doubts about Tennessee. Last year they did really well, but some of that was because they won in one-score games. The Raiders, that's a hell of a division. I'm not surprised. They played good teams.
Yep.
Carolina and Atlanta are the other 0-2 teams. I don't really consider them I don't consider that a surprise. The 1-1 teams, look, the first week, never judge anything on the NFL on the first week based upon the simple truth that literally is their preseason game. That is the vast majority of the preseason. Mm-hmm. So my take is that 1-1 teams are, everything is to be answered. But Buffalo is really impressed. Jalen Hurts in Philadelphia. I mean, I knew Philadelphia had a good roster. If Jalen Hurts could play well, he's really impressed. Kansas City, what can you say about that offense? And so that's where I'm at.
Yep. Kev, how about you, man? Anything in 2022 jumping out at you so far in the National Football League?
Yeah, well, this Reggie guy. Listen, the Colts have 1 loss, right? You know how many teams in the NFL have 1 loss right now?
Right.
26 teams have at least 1 loss. You can't judge it on the second week. Yeah, the man was sacked. The man was sacked 5 times.
I'm pretty sure the snicker and asterisks on the email pretty well says that he's just throwing a dart at you.
Yeah, because I mean, there's 26 teams with 1 loss. Like Rob said, it's only the second week. Somebody could go on a 6-win streak right now. You just never know.
Yep.
So that could happen. You know who I'm surprised at? My Falcons. Now I thought they were going to be just awful, god awful. Yes, they're 0-2, but check this out, Rob.
No, they were competitive in both
by
games.
A total of 5 points over 2 games. They scored at least 26 points per game. I didn't expect that.
I didn't expect
that. They lost by
either.
1 point and 4 points and had a shot in both games.
Right.
So who knows? That quarterback they got now, he may, maybe. I don't know.
Check down Charlie Mariota.
Yeah, I was just surprised that the games were that close. I really was. So
Mariota has not played well. Let's just say that. But I will say that you're right. They have looked better than I expected. And
listen, we're talking about against, first of all, the Saints by 1 point and against the Super Bowl champions by less than a touchdown. So, they shocked me, and we'll see.
Yeah, but okay. First week, that Super Bowl championship team, man, did they get hammered by the Bills again? The Bills.
Yeah.
Again, 2 weeks. And especially that first week.
Yeah, it's too early to tell.
But I love, we love the NFL, and part of the reason we love the NFL is because we can talk about it. What the hell? Let's make a mountain out of a molehill of what's happened so far.
Yeah, I've only seen one better. The Bills, I think they've allowed 17 points all season, but Tampa's only allowed 13. So now I'm like, wait a minute, we're supposed to talk about Tampa's offense. Their defense is doing this?
Well, and here's what I will say about some of this stuff. 2 years ago, when Tampa won the Super Bowl, it took time for them to find their stride. All right, so
Yeah.
it could still happen for a lot of these teams, and I think the Colts are in that crowd. Um, I don't think you can talk about 2022 without talking about injuries so far. Obviously, Dallas, with Dak losing him. So are they worked out my man Cookus from the USFL, Captain Cookus. I hope that guy gets a shot just because it was a blast to watch him play for the Stars in the USFL title game. Like, he went out and seriously put on a show right up until the point that he got hurt. And that's what leagues like that are supposed to do, is give those guys a fighting chance to maybe try and go make a roster.
Like Kevontae Turpin in Dallas. I want to add one more point about the 0-2 teams.
Yeah.
For years, we have talked about this certain percentage of 0-2 teams making the playoffs and how bad the percentage is. None of that is wrong. However, all of it's based upon a 16-game season, and we've only had this is only the second year of a 17-game season.
Yep.
I am curious, and we don't have the data yet to really have any kind of, we'll have to wait for years before we have any of the data. I'm curious if that will dramatically change those odds, because I do think the Bengals have a good team if they can protect Joe Burrow. The hammering that he got from the Cowboys this weekend was not a good sign.
Yeah, no doubt. For a squad that had supposedly upgraded their offensive line in the offseason, it wasn't a good look at all.
Nope.
So, but no, back to the injuries. Obviously, you've got Dak in Dallas. Although, and Rob, you can correct me on this. Rumor is he may be back a little bit sooner than anticipated. You're still going to be without him for a few games, but you might not be looking at 8-9. It may be 4-5, if that, right?
That's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing that he might come back in week 6 or so. I will. Dak Prescott being Dak Prescott, he was actually practicing in pads today, though he didn't actually throw the ball or doing anything. But they have pictures of him practicing in pads so that when the time comes, he can transition back faster. That's almost never done. Actually, I got a chance to watch Dallas's practice live last Thursday. I went and toured the Star, and as you're touring the Star, you can watch the practice from the facility.
Cool.
The player that I thought looked impressive, and I'm not an expert, Jason Peters. They were working him out and he looked good.
Cool.
He looked good.
Cool.
Yes, some of those memes were brutal on Dallas, though.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
The one that said, Jerry Jones said, if you live in the Dallas area and have one of our jerseys, practices tonight at 6 p.m.
Hey, they've had some bad injury luck so far. I mean, getting Tyron Smith out and Tyler Smith, but Tyler Smith has played really well. Yeah. Then getting the guard next to him, the guy that replaced Tyron at left guard, Connor McGovern, to go out, that hurt. And Matt Farniok, he didn't look good, but that was his first start ever. Right. I don't know. They didn't do terrible actually against a really good defensive line on the Bengals, and if we'll see.
Other kind of parting shots from me on the NFL. Obviously, San Francisco losing Trey Lance. What a horrible break for that kid. No pun intended. Broken ankle. This is a guy that by the time he gets back will have played football 1 out of the last 4 years. Not what you want from your franchise quarterback, but obviously they have Jimmy G there in the wings, so I think they'll be okay. But when you invest a third overall pick in a player, particularly a quarterback, you're really hoping you're going to get return on that. And Niner fans are going to have to wait another year. So hate it for the kid. Wish him well, fast recovery, and he can come back and show us what he has or doesn't.
Wouldn't that be a story if Jimmy Garoppolo led them to the Super Bowl and he became suddenly the real friend? How do you get rid of Jimmy Garoppolo if he leads them to a Super Bowl victory?
Yep. The new Jeff Hostetler. He would totally have to grow out the Jeff Hostetler porn stash.
Absolutely. That's the guy I was thinking of, too.
Didn't the Eagles do that to somebody that took them deep into the playoffs?
Oh, yeah.
We're done with you now. You're out of here.
Nick Foles.
Nick Foles.
Yep,
yeah.
Nick
So,
Foles.
But theoretically, Carson Wentz was the answer.
Yep. Final shot on the NFL. Couple of other, transactions that have not panned out thus far. Baker Mayfield being numero uno. I'm not really surprised. I've never been a big Baker guy. I thought he was a little bit overhyped, overrated. I didn't think he was going to do much in Carolina, and I don't think Matt Rule is going to do much. So Panther fans, if you're looking for a new head coach, I think you're going to get your wish, maybe even by mid-season if they continue to just suck it up the way that they are. Big shout out to Jags fans. I didn't think you had a 24-0 beating on anybody, much less the Colts. And a friend of mine, Dave, was at that game watching. I didn't think Jacksonville had that in them, especially not this early in the season, but kudos to them and good for their fans. They deserve a win like that. I hope it continues coming for them. Next question comes to us from Katie. Looks like NASCAR is going to go back to the future with their all-star race. Call me crazy, but I think this is a great idea. But what are your thoughts? Also, is it just me, or does F1 seem to really hate American drivers? I'll take lead on this. I love the North Wilkesboro announcement that they are going to race the all-star race there next year. No sport in America has an all-star event that I think is worth the crap. And for years, NASCAR has very much been in that business. Going back to North Wilkesboro, I think is a brilliant move. Props to Speedway Motorsports and Marcus Smith and all the people who helped to make that happen. Lord knows it wasn't the actual NASCAR brass because frankly, they're just not that bright. But the SMI folks, way to call a great shot, man. It's going to be a fabulous show. If the late model race that they held there a couple of weeks ago was any indication, they packed it out 80,000 strong. It's going to be an awesome event to watch. So for old schoolers like me, man, freaking, we're going back to North Wilkesboro Speedway. That is money, baby, money. Little swingers reference there. As far as the F1 thing, Katie is, for those who don't follow that, Katie is referring to the Colton Herta situation. Colton is an American driver, a very good American driver who's winner of the IndyCar series. And all of the talk is that AlphaTauri, Red Bull Junior team over in F1, wanted to sign him. That's in lockstep with F1's big push into the American marketplace. Obviously, we've got the USGP in Austin. We've got the Miami Grand Prix street race from last year. And next year, they're going to run both of those and the Las Vegas Grand Prix on the Strip. So, been a lot of talk about whether or not F1 would finally, finally allow grace one of us woeful American drivers in their really big, fancy, pretty series. And turns out not so much. It's still pretty well a European elitist club. And they don't think very highly of folks over here, regardless of if we turn left, or left and right. It really doesn't matter. They just don't frankly think that we can drive and they don't want us in their club. So, and I think that sucks because F1 is obviously the pinnacle of motorsport. You'd love to have American representation there. God knows we got to have somebody over here that's worthy, right? Good Lord, I've watched, driver after driver go over there and suck. Most recently, Daniel Ricciardo, unfortunately, but our guys just aren't good enough. That's too bad. All the more reason to watch IndyCar, folks. It's a better series anyway. Kev, you're old school NASCAR guy, man. You remember North Wilkesboro Speedway. You had to have smiled when you saw that.
I was thrilled. I love that. Maybe that's part of me wants to keep everything in the Southeast anyway, but that's where NASCAR's roots are, So.
It's just such a cool track, though.
It is. It is a great facility. So
it's a short track. It's got elevation on both sides of the track. It's going to be an awesome race.
Yeah, I love Bristol. I love that's my track. Those kind of tracks I love. That bumping and grinding. Where if there is a little bit of bumping and grinding, which is going to happen, that it doesn't destroy the aerodynamics so much that your car won't do 200 miles an hour or whatever.
Yeah. Yep. Rob, to kind of put this into context for you, man, NASCAR going back to North Wilkesboro would be like if somehow there was a way to turn back the clock and play one more San Francisco-Dallas game in Candlestick Park. Like all of the history, all of the heritage that took place in that park. I would say Lambeau, but we still play there. To go back into one of those old storied facilities that we watch in sports documentaries all the time and say, we're going to fight one more there. Like that's what this is.
Well, I love that thought. And honestly, one of the things that's been happening in baseball is some of that push for things like the Field of Dreams game, which, sure, it's a stunt, but then, okay, it's entertainment. It should have some stunts.
They're still playing the sport.
They're still playing the sport.
Yeah. Yep. No, I think it's awesome. So yeah, all the kudos in the world to the Speedway Motorsports folks. They, unlike NASCAR itself, seem to really have a pulse on how to move the sport forward, but in a way that still respects what it is, what it should be, and where it came from. There's nothing, and I've said this on this show for years. Nothing wrong with new, and nothing wrong with change, and nothing wrong with moving the needle. But when you have no sense of yourself, of your identity as a sport, who your fan base is, and what you are, you will fail every single time. And NASCAR did that in the mid 2000s. I worry that they're on the way to doing that again now, but not today. North Wilkesboro, I'll take that all day long.
Don't run
Next
over your
question.
new friends.
Do what?
Don't run over your new friends, or
Yeah.
don't run over your old friends just to get some new friends.
Sure.
Because the old friends have been there for a while.
Yep. Well, I've used this analogy on this show before. It's like going to the prom with that guy who's been your best friend, and he just proceeds to show up and make a complete ass out of himself because he thinks he's going to go home with a prom queen. It's never going to happen. And all he does is alienate the guys who he came there with. So, but anyway, another rant for another time. Next question. Next question comes to us from Scott. Let's see here. You guys have been, excuse me. Sorry, Scott, I'm butchering your question here. You guys have written in obviously a lot of different science fiction franchises, ranging from the 4HU to Salvage and obviously fantasy stuff like Eldros. Obviously, you love them all. However, if you had to pick one as your favorite universe to write in, which universe would that be? Kevin, I'm going to give you lead on this one, man. You've written 4HU, you've written Salvage, you've written in several fantasy franchises now. You got a favorite?
Yeah, it remains Salvage. Maybe just because that's my baby. That's my, my first foray into it. But it remains Salvage.
Gotcha.
So,
No. I gotta know. Not one of your own. Let's make this not one of your own.
Not one of your own. Okay.
Hold on.
Hell, let's make it even tougher. Not one of CKP's either.
I've never written in somebody's universe that wasn't
No,
CKP.
but let's say this is a wish. What universe would you?
I mean, I have a novella coming out November 22nd. It's fivefold universe, and in that line of novellas, Kevin J. Anderson, Kevin McLaughlin, and then it'll all come out in March as one omnibus. So I mean, I've done that.
But I mean, have you ever wanted to write in say the BattleTech universe or Star Wars?
I'm probably not the one to ask for that because they're too restrictive. Star Trek, Star Wars, BattleTech, all those would be true restrictive. Hey, here's the rules, do this, do that. I can spend that same amount of time writing a Salvage novel, and as far as business wise, it's financially much more profitable, and I'm not restricted like that, and I can just run wild.
Gotcha.
So that's where I, and so it's after all the years in the military having to do what I'm told when I'm told, I am not that guy now.
Gotcha.
So that's out.
Rob, how about
that's
you,
like,
man?
yeah. So
I'd like to write in Middle Earth. I mean, that's been, I mean, I'm considering this question from a dream perspective. I mean, yeah, Kevin's absolutely right. If I wrote in Middle Earth, I would have, all sorts of rules and restrictions and hemming and hawing and all that. But man, I would love to write Rohan, the Riders of Rohan, and some of their adventures. I'd love to write about some of the second age stuff, the Numenorians, and I mean the stuff that they're doing in Rings of Power theoretically. I wanted to write that stuff, and let me tell you, there's some great epic stuff in First Age that is brilliant. But then, what did Tolkien draw that from? He drew that from from all my big inspirations as well. He drew it from Beowulf. He drew it from all the Germanic classics. He drew it from, all the mythological stuff of England, because he was trying to rewrite a brand new mythology for England.
Right.
And that's up my wheelhouse. So if I had any one favorite one that it was a fantasy, the fantasy thing, not necessarily the genre, but the one great fantasy to write in, that would be it. But that's never going to happen. There are others, of course, but that would be the big one. That would be, oh my God, I get to do this. I get to be Tolkien's heir. That would be something.
All right, fair enough. You know what? I'm gonna get a little off the beaten path here. And we've kind of touched upon that. We touched upon this with Todd Fonestock actually when he was on the show. I would love a crack at writing a Superman story. Like I feel like that character is so undervalued now and so misused that I would like to be able to have a crack at making him Superman again. mean, like, I have such immense respect for the legacy that is that Crest and that character. That was my childhood, Christopher Reeve and such, and then on into the later years with Smallville and a lot of that stuff. And I love that character. And it seems like it's almost like people are trying to ruin him now because he just doesn't fit into the model of what a superhero is supposed to be in 2022. And I think that's a shame. And I still think there is a story to tell with a character that is that noble. I Sometimes we need a Boy Scout. We don't always have to have an anti-hero. It's one of the things I love about the salvage books, Kev, and I'll doff the cap to you, man. The good guys are the good guys, and you love them and you want to root for them because they're the good guys. I miss that. And Superman for a long, long, long time defined that role for me. And I feel like they've really gotten away from that. And I think it's too bad because that should never happen with Superman. All right.
Have you, just to follow up? First of all, I agree totally. But if anybody's watching this and hasn't read the first Kevin Smith speaking to her, An Evening with Kevin Smith, he has a very, very funny and hilarious bit about him writing Superman script.
Lives.
Yep.
Superman Lives. I printed out because I have a friend who's a diehard Superman fan for his birthday years ago. I scoured the internet and you can find that script from Kevin Smith. It's out there. I
Nice.
printed the entire script and gave it to him in a notebook so that he could read it.
Brilliant.
Yeah. He's going to cast Nicolas Cage because it was a Tim Burton flick, but God, I shudder to think how that would have turned out. All right. Next question comes to us from Valerie. Let's see here. It's almost fall, boys. That means it's time to turn the page from grills and smokers to slow cookers and Instapots. What are some of your favorite fall meals to cook in honor of the season? Man, tough to go wrong with stews and chili for me. I love a big pot of chili or venison stew whenever it's good and cold out. Living where I live now, like I pretty well got to crank down the AC until like January before that happens. But I love it. I've got a couple of recipes for both of those that are they're always a hit around our house anytime we make them. And they're good and they're hearty and they're thick and they're hot and they're just badass. So chili and stew, man, I stand by it all day long. Rob, how about you, man? Fall weather, what you go to?
Well, I have to take issue with the fact of turning the page from. Let's embrace the power of and here. I'm still using my grill and my smoker, but I do make a lot of stew and I do make a lot of chili. But because tonight, in fact, we are having chili. This is not my I want to impress the neighbors recipe, but it's I want chili and I don't want to have to pay attention. And so I grabbed meat, threw it in the slow cooker and grabbed a mix that I have and tossed in a couple of cans of this and a couple of cans of that. And boom, I'm done. And so we get done with recording this. I'm eating chili.
Attaboy. Kev, how about you, man? Fall meals, go-to fall meals. What you got?
Yeah, it's always the chilies and my wife's homemade soup, which is amazing. And chicken and dumplings and those kind of things that we don't tend to cook in the hot weather. We really don't do chicken and dumplings except in the winter times. I don't know. It's an all day thing in the kitchen. My youngest daughter can make it, but it's literally, she rolls out the dough and everything else. She's not cutting up wok biscuits to make this chicken and dumpling. It's made the way her great grandmother made it. So
nice.
Yeah. So
nice. Well, that is actually going to bring us down to halftime of this mailbag episode of the Dudes in Hyperspace, where we spotlight what's happening around the world of Chris Kennedy Publishing, which in this case, this week, big deal. Big deal. Little book called World Enders from the man himself, Chris Kennedy. And that's a collaboration with the lovely and talented Marisa Wolf. This is actually connected to their last book that they put out, The Lion's Pride. So a lot of expectations on this. We interviewed Chris and Marisa recently on this show and CKP Confidential, and they both said the same thing. This was the book we wanted to write. And as we rolled it out, it became clear to us that we had to do Lion's Pride first, and it became a 2-book project. So this was the story they wanted to tell. Early reviews are that it is absolutely fantastic. So World Enders, Chris Kennedy, Marisa Wolf. Rob, what can you tell me about this one, bud?
A salsa, a vitano, a depic, and a fit eye walk into a case. Todd is the first social peacemaker candidate ever. Some would say he's not smart enough or good enough to be a peacemaker, or that the uplift designed to make him a Shah failed in his case. He's determined to prove them wrong. But when he's given the mission of finding the missing Vitanio Kesius ships, vessels that have the capability to destroy planets, it quickly becomes apparent there are more forces at play in the galaxy than are obvious at first glance. Worse, most of them don't expect him to succeed, and others don't want him to. Todd has an ace up his sleeve, though. His father, who he's lived in the shadow of his entire life, has been a member of the Golden Horde mercenary organization for as long as there have been Salsha, and Todd knows Sansar Inc. personally, the head of the company. Todd thinks he knows what he's doing. He's worked hard and studied harder at the academy, after all, but when he finds out things aren't quite the way they were portrayed in school, he rapidly finds himself in over his head with deputies who seem more intent on killing each other than solving the case. Can Todd find the missing ship, or will other factions use them to start the next great galactic war?
Boom. Again, that is World Enders from Chris Kennedy and Marisa Wolf. As always, links to Amazon pages for all of the new releases will be right there in your show notes, folks. So you don't got to go nowhere. Just look right there on your device or your computer screen, click the little linky, and away you go. Other news releases happening this week. One we've talked a lot about and heard a lot about. And if you're on social media, you're seeing a lot about it. And that is the hit world anthology, The Valkyries Initiative, as edited by Marisa Wolf. Lots of great folks in this one, from Melissa Olthoff to Rob Howell, tons of other people. Really, really, really great stuff. Early reviews on this one also are fantastic and really puts a whole new spin on hit world. This is a universe that, per my understanding, was wide open as it was, and this just completely kicked the hornet's nest and blew open a whole new realm of possibilities for that universe. So lots of buzz about it. Supposedly it's fantastic. Urge you guys to go check it out and support those authors. Again, that's Hit World, The Valkyries Initiative by Marisa Wolf and others. The other new release we've got this week is The Chimera Coop by Christopher G. Nuttall. And Rob, you can talk a little bit more about that one, buddy. What can you tell me about that?
So this is a really fun, action-filled story. If you've read Christopher Nuttall, his other stuff, this is no surprise. This is a post-apocalyptic magitech fantasy setting. So there's technology in here as well. We're trying to rebuild the pieces of this sort of Mad Max meets this magical setting, and trying to go out there and reclaim some of it from the barbarism and some of the sort of the nuclear fallout from the magic that caused the previous war, the Cataclysm. These are known as the heirs of Cataclysm, and it's definitely got all that. And Chris just does a great job. You want to root for the character. It's full of action and cool magic, and the bad guy, oh, is he a bad guy? And it's great. I really loved editing it. It's a great privilege to work with Chris Nuttall, who's a real true professional. A lot of fun. It's a fun story.
Cool. Other news from CKP, new out in audio this week, the final book in the Guild Wars by Chris Kennedy and Mark Wandry. That is, of course, Tempest Rage. So you can go find that in audio format. And then lastly, launch team readers are needed for Gates of Hell. That is book 3 of the Last Marine series by William Frisbee. So if you're interested in getting early eyes on that one, go to chriskennedypublishing.com, shoot them a message, and they will get you squared away. And that's the latest happenings from the world of Chris Kennedy Publishing. All right, moving back into our listener mail questions. Next question comes to us from Rick. No real surprises so far in college football. Bama and Georgia are good. Notre Dame sucks. App State still slays Giants, and FSU might be decent. Leaves that with a question mark. What are your big stories and big surprises so far in college football 2022? I mean, you pretty well got it there, man. I don't see anybody matching up with Georgia or Alabama, and that includes Ohio State, frankly. I don't see anybody in the Big Ten being able to challenge either one of those guys, minus injuries. Obviously, it's a young season. We've seen that with a number of teams, Florida State included. We've had a lot of star players, most notably our starting quarterback, go down. That changes the season. That could happen to Bama if Bryce Young goes down, or Stetson Bennett, or pick your superstar player. But as it stands, no, I think you're pretty well spot on the money. I think all roads go through either Athens or Tuscaloosa. And That's pretty well what we're looking at. It has been fun to watch Florida flounder under Billy Napier. Little Schadenfreude, never hurt anybody. Just saying.
And Terry Maggard just
Well,
just went.
Terry Maggart just threw his fist through a screen or threw a spitball at me. Yeah, sorry, buddy, but it is what it is. You'll still get your chance to thump us later on in the year if you feel like you guys are up to that. I'm not sure that you will be because we're looking decent if we get some people back. Rob or Kevin, I'll go to you, man, because you're obviously a big college football guy too. So talk to me about your dogs, and then talk to me about other stuff that's happening around the world of CFB that's got your antennae up.
Well, with the dogs, one thing about it, I mean, obviously injuries would be scary, but Georgia always has always played everybody. I mean, our starting quarterback has not played beyond halfway through the third quarter, and he's not going to because you got other people they can play. So if he does go down, I mean, Georgia has, they've got some other quarterbacks just waiting in the wings. So there's that. I don't know who Bama's second string quarterback is. So I mean, they would really be hurting. What I'm not surprised about is, listen, I've been known to make a bet or two on college football. I never bet in the second week of college football ever.
Sure.
It is always the week stuff goes crazy. And that happened on the second week this year, a couple of weeks back when three major upsets. I mean, crazy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Giant killers all over the place.
And Texas should have beat Bama.
Yes.
They squandered opportunity after opportunity.
Yes.
But then Bryce Young showed you what he is, and that was that.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, you stay away from week 2 in college football. Always.
Yep.
But I like the giant killers, and I like to see the small schools come up and do something.
Yeah, me too. Good on App State.
I do like that. I like to see the Gators flounder. I do like that too. I do. What do you want me to do? You want me to lie about it? I can't lie about it. I like to see that.
And we're all getting knifed by Maggard at Fantasy.
That's right.
Yeah.
Rob, how about you, man? What do you have to say about your Kansas Jayhawks?
I was going to say, how about them Hawks? Beat them Hawks, baby. All roads go through Lawrence right now. We're averaging 53 points a game, and that's going to continue, right? Right? Now, I mean, I'm a Kansas fan. Like, these are scores I expect from a really bad KU basketball team getting unlucky, honestly. And do I have any expectation KU will continue this? Hell no. But they're playing Duke, and so they got a chance to at least go 4-0. And is a bowl game within reach? I look at their schedule and say, it's not out of the question.
No.
And would getting 6 wins and going to a bowl game make me bounce up and down as a KU football fan? You darn tootin' it would be. I mean, that would be like the last 7 years combined in terms of total victories. Mm-hmm. I mean, we've been literally one of the worst football programs in NCAA, in the top division of NCAA that I can recall. And to have Leopold get us to this point so quickly is exciting. Who knows if he stays? I mean, they're already talking. They're wanting to get him to Nebraska, and there'll be some point where money is enough. But wouldn't it be interesting if he ended up staying at KU for a few years and developed something like, say, Bill Snyder did at K-State?
Well, and let's face facts here. I mean, really, other than legacy, what is the Nebraska job anymore? I mean, for my buddy Bill Ferris back in Raleigh, who may or may not, back in Chapel Hill, who may or may not be listening to this, and now he's mad at me because he's a Cornhuskers fan. I mean, like, you got to look in the mirror, man. I mean, what are you doing in Nebraska? You're certainly not recruiting anybody to Lincoln unless you've got some really deep NIL pockets. Ain't nobody going there. And nobody remembers Tommy Frazier and all those guys and Tom Osborne. They read about them, but that's all just story time to them. So, I think there's something to be said for if you've got something rolling in Lawrence and you think you can continue to keep that rolling, you look at that versus the monumental task of rebuilding Nebraska, if it can even be done in the current climate of college football. I don't know, man. I don't think that's an easy decision at all. I really don't.
And we talk about the great recruiting hubs like Texas and stuff like that. It's interesting, but there's some pretty good recruiting hubs in Kansas junior colleges.
Mm-hmm.
Butler's put out a bunch. Fort Hays State has put out a bunch. Pittsburgh University routinely wins, and sometimes those guys get drawn up. So, even from the standpoint of recruiting, maybe there is some target if he was able to get a really good relationship with a
Yep.
lot of these junior colleges, because there are dozens of NFL players who've come through Kansas Junior College.
Yep. Yep.
And
All
speaking
right.
of
Next
recruiting
question.
and the NIL real quick,
Yeah.
I think we're going to start seeing some of it might be almost the opposite of what you thought was going to happen, Ian. So somebody's good enough to play college ball, but they're realistic enough to know I'm not going to get drafted. Let me get my money now, and I don't mind playing for Troy to get it.
Right.
So I'm not, Georgia's not going to lure me to sit on the bench. Bama's not going to lure me to sit on the bench. These guys want to give me 80 grand, from the car dealership to play in Troy. I'm going to do it.
Sure.
And we're going to start seeing more of the giant killers getting a few players here and there. I mean,
We'll
Jackson
see.
State got it. Deion Sanders has got a top 5 player in the country playing for him. And
Yeah,
Well,
that's
that's
an outlier. I mean, that's like the very definition of outlier there.
There's some other ones that are getting paid in other places too, though.
So I welcome you to
won't
name
know
them
that for 4 or 5 years, though.
I don't know, man. We'll see. Again, I'm at the point now with college football, and we've beat this horse to death, so I'll make it quick. I'm at the point now with college football. Can we please just rip the Band-Aid off? All right, let's just go ahead and break everything down as it is. Let's reconsolidate the teams that are worth having, the top 40, 45 teams, whatever.
Which includes Kansas now.
into 2 conferences. Let's give them an equitable television deal so everybody's getting the same, television revenue. Let's set some boundaries on transfer portals. Let's have contracts. Let's do all of those things. And then let's strap in and play some football. And let's all play off of an even playing field, so that, if Kansas at that point can hire the right coach and get that ball rolling, they're playing with the same money and the same resources that Alabama is, or Ohio State. So now it's just like the Jacksonville Jaguars, man. You get access to the same stuff that the Colts do or the Bills do. If you can't put it together, it's because organizationally you're just not good enough, or you can't hire the right coach. But it doesn't come down to you being, coach, trying to build a team with a hand behind your back, which is what I think everybody outside of the SEC and the Big Ten has now. So anyway, let's just go ahead and clean the board, man. Let's start over fresh and get to it. I'm ready to play some ball. Next question comes to us from Malcolm. As a food nut myself, I love the fact that every time I see Zareth from the Salvage Books, he's stuffing his face with food. I think it's incredible how small details like this can really make or break a character. How do you guys utilize these sorts of character quirks and traits in order to make your own characters come off the page? Well, he's referencing one of your people, Kev. So I'll give you lead on that. Is that something you just intentionally did, or did that just organically come out of you?
No, that was deliberate. Because people want to have characters that they remember and they recognize, and they want a memorable trait. And that was an easy one to give him in his race, that he's always eating, always got a handful of food. And it was deliberate. And funny enough, if you really, really dig into the books, I don't have to go into a lot of other things to give him his own characteristics. Yeah, right. He's the tech guy, and yeah, he repairs stuff and that kind of thing. But those are throughout science fiction everywhere. There's always somebody who repairs everything. Right. You know what I mean? But I gave him that trait on purpose, and that's where people relate to, Yeah.
So. Gotta love a foodie. Rob, how about you, man? Have you got a character that comes to mind, or that you wrote or somebody else wrote, that it's just that interesting little quirk about them that it's what you remember?
I absolutely do, or try for it. One thing I do to mine that is I go back and look at the character traits that I find interesting when I read them in a book or on a screen or something like that. One example I have is one of my cops in my private eye novels. Her name is Vono, and it's medieval setting. So she doesn't have like an iPad or anything like that. Doesn't have a computer or anything like that. But she's modeled after a particular character from the Spencer books called Belson, Frank Belson, who is the junior partner of the 2 cops, and the other one is actually modeled, of course, that I wrote of is definitely modeled after Martin Quirk. But the point is that in the books, Parker makes a point of that particular character, Belson, who isn't portrayed well in the TV shows, I have to say, but in the books, he's portrayed as always picking up details. He just simply routinely stares at a crime scene, and he just looks at it. doesn't take notes, doesn't
Right.
do anything, but he'll have all the details. I built off that character. I actually gave my character a wax tablet. If you don't know what this is, in medieval times they would take a couple pieces of wood, and they would put wax in it, and then you would write in it with a stylus, and then you would have something that you could then erase and come back to. And I routinely have this character pull out the wax tablet, scribble things down, and that was sort of her tool to memorize everything. But I routinely talk about her never referring back to it. She knows everything because she's paid. But this is her tick, sort of.
Yeah.
And find characters that you like as a writer. If you see that quirk, whatever, like the stuffing food in the mouth kind of thing, yeah, sure, find those that you like and use them, or
Cool.
adapt them to whatever works for you.
Cool. Yeah, I have delved into that before. I guess one of the most notable examples, I guess, would probably be Remy from At Circle's End and then Detron City Vice. He's my fix-it guy, right? He's a young kid that deals with, it's basically like a sci-fi fictitious version of autism. Like he's got a lot of very extreme autism. He's got a lot of physical tics and things that he just can't control. So it makes him memorable in that, he's constantly battling this. In the case of Detron City Vice, though, that was how I worked in my 80s soundtrack to that story. Was this kid figures out that through music therapy, all right, he can learn to control that. Like it helps him to stay focused. So now when you walk into the Overlook engineering room, there's always going to be music on because that's what this kid needs in order to be able to dial in and work and do his job. So it's U2, it's the Police, it's Journey, it's, it's all of that good stuff from, that made the show what it was, the Who, et cetera, Genesis. But it all started because I gave that kid, a physical tick that just made him stand out from everybody else around him, Anyway, good stuff. All right, let me hop
To
back
follow
over.
that real quickly, Guardians of the Galaxy would not be near so good of a television or a movie if it weren't for the fantastic soundtrack they put
Oh my
on
God, yeah.
that tape and
Yep.
playing it. I mean, that's a good movie,
Oh yeah.
but
Yep.
it made it brilliant.
I went so far as to create. It's on the blog on my website. It's a couple of years old now, but I went so far as to create a casting list, director choices, and all of that for what a Mako film would look like. And I have, I do kind of official soundtrack playlists for all of my books, and the Mako books. That's it, man. It is Queensryche. It is Van Halen. It is, it is Styx. It is all those feel good rock and roll, straight up good time and rock and roll anthems. So, all right, next question comes to us from Ben. Historically, I've scoffed at the notion of drinking anything with the word redneck in it. However, after hearing Ian's recommendation for Redneck Riviera at a con, I bit the bullet and picked up a bottle. Surprisingly enough, it's not half bad. Told you. It's decent stuff. John Rich knows how to make whiskey. Have you guys picked up any new spirits lately? If so, now is the time to name names. Kev, I know this isn't quite your bag. You're more of an NA space guy. So, Rob, I will turn to you. Have you had any new whiskeys or anything different lately that you've just kind of happened upon that caught your eye that may be a little bit off the beaten path?
No, not really. Oddly enough, I haven't had a lot of whiskey of late because most of the time I've been drinking a variety of beers. Um, I will say though, I think his instinct was correct. Avoid redneck stuff. This may be the exception that proves the rule, but avoid the redneck alcohols. This way leads to madness.
No, it's actually it's a good whiskey, man. It's I say that not in jest at all. Like it's legitimately a good whiskey for $20. It's a blend, and I would
Nice.
stack it up just about against any blend of that price point. It's got a nice smooth finish to it. If you want to upscale and get the reserve for like $40 a bottle, typically you can get on a bottle of the regular stuff for about 22 bucks. And I like it. I like it a lot. Plus, I think it's either a portion of the proceeds anyway go to Folds of Honor, which
Nice.
never a bad deal there. But yeah, I like it. As far as off the beaten path stuff that I have found lately, actually, I was over in Tallahassee not too long ago visiting family and friends. And a guy over at the one of the lounges over there got me put onto this stuff called, I think it's Millman and Green Triple Cask. It is a 2-year Texas whiskey blended with a 7-year Tennessee and an 11-year Tennessee. Initially, I was kind of like, that doesn't speak to me, man. But the guy running that place was like, you got to try it. Come on over here. It's on me. I'm going to give you a round. You can tell me what you think. And I went home with a bottle of it. It was really good stuff. And that was going to run you a little bit more. We'll say about 40, 45 for that one. But definitely, if you like a blend, man, Millman and Green Triple Cask. It was really, really, really good stuff.
Well, and I do have a suggestion. I mean, we're getting micro distilleries the same way we'd gotten wineries and
Yep.
microbreweries. The thing I tend to look for in micro distilleries are the ones that are teaming up with one of the local providers of another drink. For example, and now in this case, it's the same company, but one of my favorite bourbons is Beer Barrel Bourbon
Yeah.
by New Holland, and that's an old one. But if I'm looking for a micro distillery, are they going with the local brew pub to kind of collaborate and come up
Yeah.
with mixtures of flavors? Because we all can find a good Scotch. Macallan 12 for me. I've got a number of others that I want down the way in various different alcohols. But if I'm looking for some kind of new taste, I'm looking for people who are putting their heads together.
Yeah. Fair enough. All right. Next question comes to us from Kyle. Does anyone have any intention whatsoever of watching the new Quantum Leap reboot or the new Andor Star Wars series on Disney Plus? I'm just gonna say no, not really. Again, Kenobi was the last of it for me on the Disney Star Wars stuff. When the next season of The Mandalorian comes around, I'll probably wait on the entire season to drop, and then I may give it a shot because I think that's an interesting story. But pretty much everything they've rolled out has been crap. Kenobi was pretty much awful. Boba Fett was a fun romp. They don't need to do any more of that. One season was plenty. You don't need to do more of that character. Um, I don't need another Star Wars prequel to the Star Wars. Like, I've seen the birth of the rebellion. It's called Star Wars Rebels and Rogue One. Like, we've done it enough already. Stop freaking put a bullet in Old Yeller already. We're done here. As far as the Quantum Leap reboot goes, again, I don't care, but I might give it a shot because I am hearing that it is a continuation and not a total reboot. And I'd really like to know what became of Sam Beckett, because I did love the original. So if they're going to answer that question for me, then I may give it a shot. But just on its face value, from what I saw in the trailer, it looks like just another reboot of an old show. And they tried that with Knight Rider a number of years ago, and it flopped. It got canceled at mid-season. And unless they do something special here, this will be the same. I don't care. Rob, I'll go ahead and throw to you. Quantum Leap reboot. I know you're not much of a Star Wars guy, so I know your answer on that. But were you a Quantum Leap guy back in the day? And if so, does this interest you?
Well, let me go back to Star Wars. I was a Star Wars guy. I was a huge Star Wars guy. And the three original movies are still the best. And there are some moments in Star Wars that I really do think they've done well here and there. I still want to watch The Mandalorian at some point in time.
Yeah.
My thing right now is it's Disney. I still have a hate on for Disney, so I'm not going to watch that because it is on Disney.
Yeah.
Quantum Leap, I enjoyed, but it wasn't one that I fell in love with. Scott Bakula, however, was kind of what made that, and the interaction between those two actors. And I'm blanking on the supporting guy's name.
Dean Stockwell.
Yeah, Dean Stockwell.
Yep.
Those, if they can replicate that chemistry, which isn't easy, if they can replicate that chemistry, whoever the actors are, then they've got a shot. But I'll if it's on, I'll watch it. But I'm not leaping up down on the table. I thought it was interesting though. Interesting enough that I might.
Yeah. Kev, were you a Quantum Leap guy back in the day?
I was back in the day. I just do not have the bandwidth to watch television these days. I watch my teams, I watch sports, but regular shows and I just can't.
Yeah.
Between writing and my universe, and there's 6 and 7 novels being written in my universe, and or is it 7? Yeah, 7 novels. and CKPI. We've got our 80th book came out in Germany just the other day, and the first book in Spanish comes out on the 25th. And we've got that ramped up, and so now it's going to be both languages, and I just don't have the bandwidth for television.
I want to touch base on that because I think you're absolutely right. I don't have the same bandwidth I used to have. And binging some of these really long shows is sometimes difficult. I mean, I started binging Stargate SG1, and I got in it for a while, and I still like it, but I don't watch it. The model that I think that works best for me has been The Reacher and Terminal List.
Yeah.
And it's that we've got an 8 hour, eight episodes. It's one long story arc.
Yep.
And then we can do it again. And for 8 of those, I can binge that and not, feel like I've totally screwed off writing or anything like that. I mean, I realize, shockingly, I don't know why this is true. I don't know why Hollywood doesn't write everything to my tastes. But I have to say that model is the one that I most approve of late.
Gotcha. All right. Our final question comes to us from Nicole. With fall on the horizon and family trips looming for school activities and Thanksgiving, what are some books you guys can recommend for those of us who will be hitting the road? Also, who is a new author that maybe we don't know but should? Rob, I'm going to give you lead on this one because you're a publisher, dude. You're a writer and a publisher, and you're one of the most well-read guys that I know. So have at it. What's something this lady needs to read, and who's an author that she ought to know that maybe she hasn't heard of?
Well, if you're talking audiobooks, I have an absolute suggestion. I have long talked about the Hard Magic series that's written by Larry Correia, read by Bronson Pinchot, being the perfect mix of reader and author, and so one great audible mix. They have a competitor now, and I downloaded and listened to the Chronicles of Cadfael, which was read by Derek Jacobi, excuse me. Derek Jacobi played Cadfael on the BBC Mysteries that they did this on some time ago. And Cadfael, if you don't know, are cozy mysteries set in Shrewsbury in the 1100s. They're quite excellent on their own right. Derek Jacobi reading them is perfect. He has the voice you remember from the BBC TV show.
Yeah.
He is just a fantastic actor to begin with. And at one credit, you can get 5 or 6 mysteries. They're fairly short reads to begin with, but you can get 5 or 6 mysteries. And man, I loved it. I listened to it on the way down to FenCon. It was amazing. Perfect.
Cool.
The author I would suggest you read is one I'm about to publish in a couple weeks. Her name is Trisha J. Wooldridge.
I will be having lunch with her tomorrow for CKP Confidential. So Patreon fans, you're going to be getting to know her shortly. I
met her at Superstars.
Okay.
And sometimes you meet somebody and you go, well, this is a lovely person, a bubbly personality, someone who looks like they know what they're doing. Do they have the skill? Do they have the chops to match with their awesome appearance and in terms of the way you meet them and talk to them and all those things? Because when I met her, I was really impressed with this woman. She is smart. She had a whole bunch of things to talk about on the publishing side of things, on the professional side of things. And I was like, I really need to get to talk to this person, get to know this person, because I at the very least, I need to learn some of the things that she's already learned about the publishing industry. And believe me, I've been mining her experience for that. But then I read her story and I went, wow. The only quibble I had on her story was quite literally she had structured it in a way that doesn't really fit our model, and we played around with the structure a little bit and added more oomph to the conclusion. Actually, what I said was, hey, we need some more oomph, and I got it back, and I was like, this was a great ending. This was awesome. I am so excited about Heart, Wings, and Fire and the rest of the stuff that she's going to do in her 27 Kingdom setting. She's got a bunch of stuff out there. She's written mostly horror and some other kinds of things like that. But to check her out, she is really impressive.
Cool. Kev, how about you, man? Need a book recommendation for this lady getting on the road? Can be audio, can be not. It's fine. and then an author that she doesn't know that she oughta.
Well, I don't know what she reads, so that sort of.
Well, she listens to this show. It's a decent bet that sci-fi fantasy is in the ballpark.
I think she needs to look into Fred Hughes. He is a new CKP author. Chris
I met
picked
him.
him up and grabbed his first 3 books. And listen, his first book's approaching, it's over 1,000 reviews. And that was an independent author putting it out, less than 18 months ago or whatever. So Fred Hughes is going to be big in the industry, I believe.
Cool.
I met him this weekend at FenCon.
Yeah.
I was really impressed with him.
Yeah.
Cool.
His first book, The Prince Awakens, it's coming out October 25th. And then, like I said, Chris picked him up and I mean, that's a new one that definitely.
Cool. As far as go-tos for me, man, I love the Dresden Files. I mean, if you're looking for, big time mainstream stuff, those are great stories. And James Marston, him as Spike from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and Angel does all the reading. He does a fabulous job. They're a blast. I can line those up and knock those down. They are a ton of fun to listen to. As far as stuff that maybe you have or have not heard of, really tough to go wrong with the Fallen World stuff out of Blood Moon Press. Mark Boyette reads those, and he really does a fabulous job. I want to say there's a good 4 or 5 of those that are out in audio now. That's Fallen World from Chris Woods. Those are really, really, really a good listen. I've got the first 2 or 3, including the anthology From the Ashes. And those are really, really well. Great stories. And again, a great narrator makes all the difference. So Fallen World, can't go wrong.
My King of the Mountain story was in that From the Ashes.
Yeah,
nice.
Yeah, there you go. Cowardly on County here. So, all righty, guys. Well, listen, thanks so much for all of your questions. We will be doing another mailbag show sometime in the next month or 2. So if you want to get your questions in, we are not hard to find, man. As you guessed, we're not bashful either. So come find us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, MeWe, all the usual suspects, or email the show Dudes in Hyperspace podcast or dudesinhyperspace@gmail.com. Excuse me. We like email too, because, well, we're old. I do want to say thanks as always to our sponsors, Chris Kennedy Publishing, International Association of Science Fiction and Fantasy Authors. This show doesn't exist without them. And also thanks to you, the listeners. We always appreciate hearing from you guys. If you want to support this show, you know how to do it, man. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Google, wherever, if they let you leave stars in a review, we'd really appreciate it if you would do that. It helps to bump us up through the rankings. YouTubers, like the shows, follow the channel, man. It's the best thing you can do for same reasons. It helps to spin up the algorithm and get us in front of some folks who may or may not have necessarily been looking for us. Got a great author guest on deck for our next episode. Not going to tell you who it is, though. You're just going to have to tune in and catch it. Until then, I'm Ian J. Malone. He is Rob Howell. He is Kevin Steverson, and we are the Dudes in Hyperspace podcast. See ya.